Welcome to 10 for 10, the podcast that delves into 10 modern Israel concepts, each for about 10 minutes. We are Dr. Tal Greenfuss David and Dr. Jonathan Golden, and today's episode will ask whether Israel's collective memory re-traumatizes every generation or strengthens it with resilience. What is the value of giving close attention to past trauma and tragedies that befell the Jewish people? How does Jewish collective memory function to showcase power and vulnerability? In this episode, we will examine what Israelis choose to remember, the ways that Jews create and pass on collective memory, and reflect on the ways future generations will remember the events of our time. Jews have developed unique ways to remember our past and fulfill the mitzvah, the commandment, of Vishinantam levanecha, to teach these diligently to our children. Jonathan, collective memory is such an important component of maintaining identity and belonging. What are some examples of the ways that Jews remember our ancient past, the tragedies that have befallen the Jewish nation, and the celebrations of overcoming existential challenges?
Well, Tal, we're recording today a few weeks after Passover. And I think of the Passover Seder as one of the most ritualized and practiced moments of collective memory, which focuses directly on the commandment to teach one's children. During the Passover meal, we are urged to experience as if we went through the exodus of Egypt itself. Also, the Passover Haggadah speaks of the idea that in every generation, someone arises to destroy the Jewish people, but the Holy One delivers and saves the Jewish people from this fate. We know that Jewish memory is transmitted through text, song, food, and family traditions. Whether it's Passover, Hanukkah, or Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals that recalls the period of exile, Jewish tradition is infused with the commandment of Zachor, to remember moments of redemption and remember moments of tragedy. Thus, the study of history and the act of communal memory are core to Jewish identity, and each of those have played a key role in the endurance of the Jewish people. In fact, the Dalai Lama once invited Jewish leaders to meet with him so he could learn about the secret of Jewish spiritual survival in exile, and that secret connected to the idea of collective memory. The lessons of the Jewish tradition of memory informed the development also of the modern Zionist movement in the state of Israel. So, Tal, how did the early Zionist movement relate to the idea of collective memory?
Well, in the early years of pioneerism, land was everything. This movement was a return to the homeland. It was the cultivation of a new Jewish identity of self-sufficiency, with deep-rooted connection to Jewish text and history. One could often see pioneers walking the land with a Bible in hand, reading the passages that referred to the places they were touring and developing. Purchasing, resettling, and rebuilding the land was a physical representation of 2,000 years of spiritual yearning and collective memory. The windmill of Yamin Moshe, built in 1857 to grind flour, was built to make residents self-sufficient, and it immediately became a landmark and a tourist destination. It remains so until today. In the 1920s, a Jaffa orange orchard was purchased by entrepreneur Pinchas Rutenberg, who built a power plant on the grove. Its first customers were the first couple of Tel Aviv, Meir Dizengoff, the first mayor, and his wife. The street became HaChashmal Street, Electricity Street, and the neighborhood was called Gan HaChashmal, or Electricity Garden, which still houses the management headquarters of the Israel Electric Corporation today. I bring these two examples because, like the many other historic accomplishments of the early pioneers, they also became landmarks for the collective memory of the nation. Alongside modern accomplishments, archaeological preservation of structures from antiquity captured the collective memory of the Jewish people in the land of Israel for thousands of years. For example, the Nachal Brigade typically completes a 31-kilometer march with stretchers to complete their training and receive their berets at Masada, the Jewish ancient fortification above the Negev Hills, as a symbol of strength and resilience and of never again.
Tal, what you shared makes me think about the Tel Hai Memorial, one of the most important long-standing memorials in the modern period since 1934, and has been an important pilgrimage site. The Tel Chai Memorial commemorates a clash between Jews and Arabs in the pre-state period, where Yosef Trumpeldor was reported to have uttered his famous last words, often quoted, Tov Lamut B'Artzenu, it is good to die for one's country. On Tel Chai Day, to this day, youth groups travel to the site as a way to connect with early Zionist history and ideals. It is one powerful example of how a memorial can become a sacred space.
Jonathan, the Holocaust and its aftermath played a very large role in shaping diaspora and Israeli identity, with memorials around the world, including Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. What do you see as the goals of these memorials and museums? And how are these goals embedded into the public art and displays?
It's a great question, and I think we're in a real sea change moment when it comes to Holocaust education. It's striking to notice the narratives and endpoints of Holocaust museums as expressions of the public education goals of each society. Yad Vashem was built to focus on the memory and experience of the victims, and the museum journey ends with a panoramic view of Jerusalem. The goal there is to put into context the birth of the State of Israel and its role as a guarantor and safe haven for the Jewish people. Yad Vashem also includes the Garden of the Righteous of the Nations to honor non-Jews who rescued Jews from the Nazis. In contrast, the United States Holocaust Memorial in Washington, D.C. focuses on the perspectives of perpetrators and ends with a view of the U.S. Capitol. Its implicit message is that democracy and civics are the protectors against future acts of genocide and discrimination. There are dozens of Holocaust memorials in U.S. cities that take different approaches to memory, but often through a more personal or interactive experience in a way that engages the viewer directly. Just to give one example, in my own backyard, the New England Holocaust Memorial in Boston is situated close to the Freedom Trail, Boston City Hall, in a key commercial center area of Boston, so that both tourists and residents can easily encounter it intentionally, and most importantly, at times without intending to do so. And that is precisely the point, to awaken people to think differently about the Holocaust and memory as an interruption through their daily routine, and to think about the lessons of that history. Paul, what do you notice about the design and goals of memorials in Israel?
You brought so keenly all these examples of how art makes people feel and think. And Israel is littered with andartaot, monuments, and art installations commemorating tragic and heroic events. I remember growing up in Israel and driving the long winding road up to Jerusalem, and along the side one would see rusted tanks. Those were later removed, of course, and replaced with artistic representations of those tanks. But I remember the rusted tanks from the War of Independence. Then at the entrance of the hill of Shar Hagai, when you get to the top, you can see these enormous metal spears jutting out of the mountainside. And these are memorials from Israel's War of Independence. The spears themselves represent Potzei Haderech, those who fought to break through the Arab siege of Jerusalem, to deliver food and medicine to the civilians. The monument wasn't installed until 1967, even though a committee was formed in 1951, due to divisions in the committee about the initial design submissions. Finally, they agreed on the spears designed by Naomi Henrich, and at its installation ceremony, several of the fighters from that Palmach unit in the battle attended, and an explanation plaque was installed in memory of the fallen with the verse from Yeshayahu, Leman Zion lo echshev uleman Yerushalem lo eshkot. For Zion's sake, I will not hold my peace, and for Jerusalem's sake, I will not be silent. Jonathan, which public installations in Israel do you see as examples of both commemoration, collective memory, and also impressive artistic impact?
It makes me think back to 7 years ago when I was so moved to visit the Beital Yisrael Memorial on Har Herzl, Mount Herzl. That memorial remembers the thousands of Ethiopian Jews who attempted to immigrate to Israel, but sadly died on the journey. The evocative structure features a stone-shaped Ethiopian village and a sign explaining the story of Ethiopian Jewry. On each Yom Yerushalayim, or Jerusalem Day, the Ethiopian community gathers at that site of that memorial to commemorate their fallen brothers and sisters and to keep their memory alive. Through its design, the Yitzhak Rabin Center in Tel Aviv presents the interwoven relationship between the state of Israel and the biography of one of its key leaders. Visitors follow one quarter of the museum to follow Rabin's personal biography, his story, and find themselves connected to the broader context of national world events. The architecture of the building reflects the trajectory of his life, descending from upper floors of his grand vision to the ground floor memorial site of his tragic assassination. Broadening the concept of collective memory, I also think about the remarks that Israeli President Yitzhak Herzog gave in 2021 on the 65th anniversary of the Kfar Qasim tragedy. In his reflection on collective memory, President Herzog said, "Ladies and gentlemen, history shows us that a country's strength is judged, among other things, by its ability to look directly at events in its past. But my brothers and sisters, the past, difficult as it may be, is the most important engine for our present and future here in the state of Israel. The deep wound that was opened here, meaning Kfar Qasim, in this place 65 years ago, is a wound for the whole Israeli society, Jews and Arabs alike." He went on to say, "This ceremony, that ceremony in 2021, marking 65 years since the catastrophe that took place right here, is not only a moment for soul searching about our past, it is also an important opportunity to look at our shared future. It is not too late to fix what needs repair. On the contrary, this is just the time to do so." And the president concluded, "On this day, 65 years ago, after the catastrophe, we shall pray and hope that the memory will stay with us as a lesson and a compass, and that from the depths of pain, we shall sprout forth together a shared future full of hope." I just want to add that President Herzog recited those words just a few months after the events of May 2021, a time when there was violence in mixed cities, and a time when a shared future seemed very much in the balance.
Yeah, for our listeners, we will be putting in the guide more information about Kfar Qasim and about the events that took place there, those tragic events. In the aftermath of October 7th, art has not only become a source of resilience and a memory, but a plea at times and even a protest to bring home the hostages. In what is now called Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, there is a table for holidays and Shabbat with empty seats, showcasing the photos of people who are not yet home. Yellow ribbons are everywhere in Israel, from small pins on clothes to giant banners on the sides of buildings, and even to the choreographed Daglanut, the flag dance of the flag bearers at Israel's 77th Independence Day. I was really impressed to see one gallery in Israel ask Israeli artists to create krazot, like the Zionist posters of the early years, with an embedded line of lyrics from an Israeli song that everyone would recognize, part of the canon and collective memory. It was inspiring to see the proceeds of the sales of those posters donated to the families of hostages. Art can not only serve as a representation of hope and memory, but also as a mechanism for doing tzedakah, charity. I was also impressed with the graffiti art around Israel, capturing the heroic actions and everyday individuals turned superheroes on that horrible day of the attack. I especially appreciated the spray-painted figure of grandmother Rachel Edri, who baked cookies for the terrorists who held her and her husband hostage in their own home, all to gain time, while she signaled to her son and to the Israeli forces outside how many terrorists were there, what they were doing, where they were, and how to access the house to save them both. And then watching her light a torch in the Independence Day ceremony felt like a core national memory. Also remarkable was the inclusion of the Druze community in the torch lighting ceremony, as Lieutenant Colonel Fayez Fares, a Druze commander who fought in Kibbutz Re'im on October 7th, was recognized for the amazing contribution of the Druze to Israel's defense and collective memory. Jonathan, which art installations post-October 7th did you find inspiring or impactful?
Your reflections, Tal, brought me back to the very personal and organic memorials that have developed since October 7th. Anyone listening who's traveled through Ben Gurion Airport over the past 18 plus months could see the line of posters of the hostages adorned with notes, personal gifts. and other meaningful tokens of remembrance or connection to each of those people. It's an example of a living memorial that's not static, as posters have been removed as hostages either returned home or their fate, their death, was confirmed. Because it's an ongoing and unfinished story, it's not surprising that this is a more temporary marker. With time and public deliberation, Israeli society will determine how it wishes to memorialize these events and this time period.
Yeah, given that it took 10 years, for example, for the 9/11 memorial to be open to the public, we can expect that any permanent monument in Israel will also take really careful thought and planning and may include a public call for proposals. Any worthy proposal will consider how future generations will remember October 7th and its aftermath, what the goals of this memorial should be, including any educational experiences, and how to artistically represent the messages and the lasting legacy we want to share with visitors to the site, be they Israelis or world visitors. This Yom HaShoah of 2025, I viewed several documentaries which aired on Israel's national television channel, together with the rest of Israeli society. One of which was the Eichmann trial, featuring the lead investigator at that time, who is today 100 years old. And he recommended that we, the Jewish people, remain optimistic, resilient, and hopeful for the future, because that is the secret to our endurance. It was truly remarkable to see him issue that kind of feeling and emotion. Documentaries, in addition to songs, which we spoke about, Jonathan, you and I, in episode 4,
That's
and
right.
memorials that offer shared experience in history, not only to recall tragic events, but to be strengthened by the resilience of past generations to overcome challenges. Israel's 77th Independence Day was not a normal one, not only because of the challenge of celebrating while hostages remain in Gaza, and not only because it comes the day after Memorial Day as the nation grieves its fallen soldiers and victims of terrorism, but because of the fires that broke out, forcing rushed evacuations of towns around Jerusalem and the cancellations of celebrations nationwide. One photo has gone viral of a police officer on a motorcycle taking a father and his child and his baby from their burning car on the back of his motorbike to safety, with his arms stretched out behind him to keep them secure. Perhaps this gesture of arvut hadadit, responsibility to one another, is what will become a shared national memory for this year.
As the state of Israel and the world continue to navigate the trauma of the past 18 plus months, they will draw lessons from past examples of collective memory and create new ones. As the state of Israel's traumatic story is still unfolding, it's too soon to have a sense of closure and know what collective memories of this moment will endure. Whose narratives of these events will capture the hearts and minds of Israelis and people of the world? Who will transmit these narratives, and how will they be received? Will they concentrate on the victimization of the nation, or will they focus on hope?
Thank you so much for listening to Israel's Collective Memory, Retraumatizing the Nation, or Fostering National Strength and Resilience. Please visit our websites, heartstance.org and tgdconsulting.org, to download our Family and Educator Guide with links to examples of additional monuments, resources, and discussion prompts.